Hello and welcome to Rauta's Indy 5, and now newsflash, this is going to be the last Indy 5, probably forever, because I'm killing this format and moving on to a new one. So let's celebrate the very last Indy 5 with 5 different albums, 5 different styles, and all that stuff in alphabetical order. First we go to Ecuador with a split release. This is done by Akhansha, which is a solo project, and that's done with the other Ecuadorian band, Wampyric Rites. And as a split, this is very much like back to basic old school ways. You have an album full of stuff, only split between the two. Now, at least one of these bands is known by part of a raw underground black metal circle or scene, whatever it means. I tried a little bit googling up, but it didn't turn out too much, and then I got like boring. I'm not gonna even touch that because we're gonna focus on the album here. The thing here is, both of these are rather raw end of black metal, and as such, both are rather good. There are differences in style, like Vampire Rites is probably a little bit more melodic and all that stuff, but neither of these are exactly something that you would call by any standards somewhat, say, raw end of mainstream black metal. Now, these are very much underground stuff with very kind of basic riffs. There is even some level of punkishness with the riffs here. Actually, both of these, but maybe more so with Akhansha, and it's almost like flirting with RAC. Some of the riffs are really simple, and you kind of had the kind of stuff. It's not like really heavy metal, but more like punkish. So with different set of vocals, you could actually imagine it to be the like local punk band. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just putting you to the very fact that the music is simple, right to the bare bone stuff, and that's really much of it. Vampiric Rites is a little bit more melodic in that sense, and I guess maybe closer to the 1990s feeling with less punk and all that stuff. Very simple all in all, and something that you're gonna look for if you're interested in the raw end of black metal, but you're not really the shitty end of let's do this in my garage kind of recordings, which are so prominent nowadays. Not exactly great here, neither of the bands based on this split that is, but something that is actually pretty promising, and there's potential to be better. Definitely worth checking out, even if not great. The second album comes from Lithuania, and their previous 2 releases, which I have reviewed, not on Rauta though, because it came out before that, was actually good. So this is Au-Dessus from Lithuania, with 1 album out and 2 EPs, hence being part of Indy 5. This one is called Ment, and it's an EP release. Now, this is stuff that is often labeled as some kind of a post-metal, post-black metal that is. And as such, I think it's very describing the music. There are lots of parts which are just pure black metal, maybe more modern sense, but you have the kind of a post-metallic feeling, which is giving you a little bit of a interesting flavoring, seasoning to this whole music. Their melodies, their faster tempos, kind of screamy vocals, and the kind of a black metal production, if you will. They're very basic, but it's done right. And I think this seasoning, well, how I would like to describe is, it's actually creating this band a little bit of a different sound than a lot of basic black metal bands of these days. So it's actually separating this from the big mass of grey material, which is often quite boring and doesn't really stand out. Now, like I said, Ment is not as good as the previous ones, the debut release from 2015 or the debut album, End of Chapter 2017, but it's definitely going to the right direction. That is, having kind of a modern take of black metal with the post-black metal seasoning. Not exactly so much, having wandering away from basic black metal as Harkiri for the Sky, but definitely not your typical stuff. I would say recommending this one. This is pretty good and definitely worth checking out. Then we go to Australia with Beyond Mortal Dreams. This is a curious case. Started already in the 1990s, 1995 actually, but then broke up for a lot of years, only to come back out a few years later. And as such, they had their debut album out as late as 2008. But that doesn't really explain why it took the band more than 10 years to come up with the second album. Now there is EP, single, compilation stuff and all that stuff, but it was 2022 when Abomination of the Flames came out. And this is very much like Nile slash Morbid Angel worship, and it's done actually good. Now this is definitely more on the Nile side, with the kind of a, I wouldn't say oriental or Egyptian twist, but definitely something that is giving it a little bit of seasoning. Now the basic here is for American death metal. It's kind of dark, it's a little bit flirting with the technical side, that is with Nile and Morbid Angel, but I would say there is a layer of immolation present. So it's kind of a dark, kind of old schooly, but still having a little bit difference that it actually separates this from the, once again, the big grey mass, resulting this rather good of an album. I think it was one of my colleagues who said that this could be a Nile album after the two albums before they venture, or more like gone through the phase of evolution and went into something different direction after two first albums. So yeah, that is pretty much what Beyond Mortal Dreams could be. It's not as good in my opinion, however, than Morbid Angel or Nile, but if they keep honing this given style, I would say yes, this is something like the next big thing. So once again, chasing the dragon for some good bands, and this is something you probably want to keep your eyes and ears peeled for. Interesting and good dark death metal, the American style with Australian seasoning. Then we have a band from Sweden, also a new one. This one is Faruln, which is now turning about 9 years old and has one album out. This is a solo project by BDSM, which is, I guess, taken from his surname. And this guy has played in various bands, which aren't all even listed here. But anyway, point here is he's not a newbie who just started a new black metal band, but actually having roots going all the way to the 1990s with his previous bands. And now this, I guess, is his solo production. Some people might say it's a solo side project, but maybe this is actually the focus. So Anti-Spirit is the first album, and this is not sounding as Swedish as a lot of Swedish black metal ones are. This is actually very mid-tempo, sometimes even a little bit melancholic kind of a black metal, which is a little bit melodic, but not as the ways a lot of Swedish black metal ones often are. The point here is, it doesn't like shine like, hey buddy, I'm Swedish black metal band. A lot of those really do that. And I think that's one of the fortes here with Faruln. You cannot really point it like, okay, this is coming from Stockholm. It sounds so Stockholmic that it couldn't be any worse. But with the songs and their catchiness and memorability, a little bit so-so on the fence. This is very, very easy to listen to. You kind of have the basic boneheaded riffs and you're like, yeah, nailing it. It's a little bit of almost black and roll. Not so much on the roll side, but this mid-tempo feeling kind of helps you get into that. But with the riffs, are they really like, wow? Not so much. I mean, I like the production, I like the vocals, and to a certain extent to the riffs as well. But then there's like, but what's more? So it's more like you know, entree of the meal. You're almost like, okay, once you're done with, and you're looking for more good taste and all, it's like, you're running out. We don't have it. And then you're like, okay, so maybe this was the demo and we're now looking for the albums. Now, seriously speaking, this is something that is pretty potential once again, but not really nailing it. It's almost like it's missing some kind of a seasoning that would really like nail it, make it like finished, and you're like, wow, this is really good. Now it's more like, yes, promising. Maybe in a couple of years you actually have the thing. Maybe it's the second album or third one, and we're like, we should have told you about Faruln earlier on. Pretty good, but no cigar. And the last, probably also the least in this pile, is one with two French bands. Other one is Simulacre, French black metal band that has nothing but EP and the Split Out, running in 2014, and Archvile King from France, which is more on the black trash territory. And they have done with Split. They had double split with together and released to Les Acteurs Les Productions, a label that is known for a lot of French melodic black metal and also very, very French sounding metal in the beginning. And to begin with, very melodic, French sounding stuff, nice digipacks and all. And I guess this is no exception. I don't have the physical copy here in Spain, so it's in my home, so really can't comment the packaging, but they always do quality work, and I love that. But the music here is less of a Ladlo Productions quality than I was hoping for. First of all, Simulacre that starts here, it runs with some 4 songs, is the kind of a demo version of what Ladlo usually does. Yes, it ticks the boxes. It's melodic, it's French, it's fast tempo, but it's boring. The thing here is there's nothing, absolutely nothing that is like, wow. I mean, it sounds like a Ladlo band. A lot of those bands Ladlo has done, even beyond the borders of France, um, they sound like that, but they are better. There's more some kind of a changes, seasoning, something that really makes them stand out. But Simulacre is almost like a schoolbook edition of that. So in order to make the Lado release, I have to have melodies. Okay, sure. I will be listening to a lot of French bands now. Screamy vocals, check. Production, not raw, not super produced. Very, very French-like. And you're ticking the boxes, and then you're like, you made a copycat album. How is this going to stand out? Who gives a damn about this kind of music? By the time I was already done with the first spin, I was like, boring. I want to move on. But obviously, for the review purposes, I give it a few spins, 4, I think. And then I was like, okay, done it. I don't want to go back to that. It's not bad, but it's very, very mediocre in so many standards. Archvile King, which I already featured a couple of years ago with the debut album, was actually pretty good back in the days. And this split part is no difference. I mean, it's once again pretty good, but not great. And their style is almost like a French edition of Our Noir. Not as technical and not as wild as Our Noir, but definitely doing the kind of black trash thing. There are lots of French melodies in this part as well, but because of the riffs are kind of a trashy and more old school than Simulacre, I mean, there's something that actually makes me tick, like, this is almost gonna nail it. So it's, once again, one of those pretty good ones, which I kind of hope that they would take to the next level, to be the next Our Noir. But they're not ready for that. But it's nonetheless interesting. Black trash, the very basic ways, nothing too technical, nothing too gimmicky, and nothing too, standing out. And there's one interesting fact. Archvile is actually a Doom, the video game boss monster. Well, not boss monster, but one of the badass ones. So it all made me think this is kind of a nerdy one. I don't know, and by no means, I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm a nerd too. And then I was checking out the song list when I was finishing with the review. And there's an interesting song. You really can't take this seriously, which in my opinion only underlines the very fact that this is pretty geeky. Gwyneth Paltrow is a lich. Now let that sink in for a bit, because it's a title that actually makes me smile. What the fuck? Gwyneth Paltrow is a lich. Let that sink in with the last Indie 5 ever. Check out Archvile and check out those other bands I mentioned, especially Beyond Mortal Dreams. Maybe Faruln as well, and the ones that I mentioned in the beginning, like Au-Dessus. But this is it. This is Indie 5, and I hope you are finding some of these bands interesting, so you will find links provided in the description box. Start listening and pick your favorites, and if you don't find anything worth listening to, stick to your favorites. This is the last Indie 5, this is Rauta, and wait for our new format to come out. Should be out roughly about a week after this one. So we'll see you with that, and bye bye.